The night was cold and dark in the alien market. Broken lamps flickered weak light and shadows danced like monsters on the cracked walls. In one of those shadows, a small alien orphan sat alone. Her body was thin, her clothes torn, and her eyes filled with fear. She hugged her knees, trying to hide from the world that never wanted her. Every day she searched for scraps of food. Sometimes she found half a fruit, sometimes nothing at all. Most of the time, others pushed her away. They called her worthless, a creature without family, without clan. They laughed at her because no alien male ever saw her as a female. To them, she was not even alive in the way others were. That night, she dared to sneak near the food stalls. The smell of roasted grain filled the air, making her stomach twist with hunger. She stretched her hand toward a piece of bread left behind on the ground. But before she could grab it, a heavy boot slammed down on it. A group of alien boys stood over her, their faces twisted with cruel smiles. "Look at her," one said. "The orphan thinks she can eat like us." "She is not female." Another laughed. "She is nothing." They kicked the bread away and pushed her down. She covered her head with her arms, waiting for the blows. She had no one to protect her, no one to call her family. In that moment, she wished she could disappear into the shadows forever. But then, footsteps. Different. Heavy, firm, not like the others. The bullies stopped and looked up. Standing at the edge of the alley was a tall figure in strange clothes. His eyes glowed in the dim light, not with cruelty, but with something they had never seen before. It was a human. The boys whispered among themselves. Humans were rare here, soldiers from distant stars. They usually kept to themselves, cold and distant. Why was one here, staring at them? The human spoke in a low, calm voice. "Leave her." The boys laughed nervously. "Why do you care, human? She is nothing. Not even a real female." But the human's gaze did not move. His jaw tightened, and there was steel in his voice when he said again, "Leave her." Something in his tone made the boys step back. They spat on the ground, muttered curses, and then ran away into the night. The orphan stayed curled on the ground, too afraid to move. The human knelt down. His hand was large, scarred from battles, yet gentle as it reached toward her. She flinched, thinking he would strike her too. But instead he placed a small bundle in front of her. Inside was bread, still warm. Her eyes widened. No one had ever given her food before. She looked up at him with confusion. Why would a human do this? Why would anyone care? "Eat," he said simply. Her hand shook as she grabbed the bread and bit into it. The taste filled her mouth, and for the first time in her life, tears rolled down her cheeks. Not from pain, but from something she did not understand. The human watched her silently, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he asked, "What's your name?" She froze. A name? No one had asked her that before. Most called her Orphan or Trash. She whispered in a broken voice, telling him the name her parents once gave her before they died. It sounded strange in her own mouth, almost forgotten. The human repeated it softly as if he wanted to remember it. His voice gave weight to the name as if it mattered. For the first time, she felt like she existed. Around them, the night grew, colder, but she felt warmth in her chest. She stared at him, still afraid, still unsure, but also filled with a new question that shook her heart. Why? Why would a human, a stranger, see her when her own kind never did? The human stood looking at the dark streets. Then he glanced back at her and said, "I will come again." And with that, he walked away, leaving her clutching the bread to her chest, trembling with fear and hope. For the first time, the orphan did not feel completely alone. The next day felt longer than any she had ever lived. The alien orphan sat in the corner of the broken wall where she usually hid, hugging her knees and staring at the road. Her stomach was empty again, but her mind was not thinking about food. She thought only about one thing, or rather, one person. The human. She wondered if he would return or if his words had been only a passing kindness. Many had spoken kind words once only to turn away forever. She had learned not to hope because hope always broke her heart. Still, she could not stop looking at the road, waiting. The shadows grew longer. The market was closing. She told herself, "He is not coming." She lowered her head and prepared to sleep in hunger. But then, footsteps again. Heavy, steady, the same as yesterday. Her heart jumped. She lifted her head. There he was. The human. He walked toward her with calm steps, his figure tall against the dim light. In his hands he carried another small bundle. She stared, unable to believe it. Why would he come again? He stopped in front of her and knelt down, just like before. He opened the bundle and placed bread and dried meat in her hands. She froze, staring at the food, then at him. "Eat," he said again, his voice low but kind. She took a bite, her hands trembling. Warmth filled her chest again, but this time something stronger came with it. Confusion. Why? Why her? Why twice? She looked up at him with wide eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why? You?" The human studied her for a moment. His eyes were different from the others. Aliens always looked at her with disgust, like she was less than dirt. But this human's gaze was calm, steady, almost soft. It was a different kind of gaze, one she had never felt before. "You are alive," he said simply. "And you are female." Her breath caught. The word struck her heart like fire. She lowered her head, shaking. No one had ever called her that. To them, she was not a female, not anything worth noticing. But this human had said it so directly, as if it were truth. Around them, other aliens had begun to notice. Traders closing their shops, children running past, all slowed their steps to watch. Whispers rose. Why is the human feeding her? Does he not know? She is nothing. She is not even female. The orphan's face burned with shame. She wanted to sink into the ground. She whispered, "Please, stop. They are watching." But the human did not move. He turned his head slowly, meeting the eyes of those who stared. His expression was firm, his voice strong when he said, "She is not nothing. She is not worthless. She is female. She deserves respect." The whispers turned into gasps. A human had just spoken against their belief, against their law. Some shook their heads in disgust. Some laughed, thinking he was foolish. But others grew quiet, unsure what to think. The orphan's chest tightened. She wanted to run, to hide. But at the same time, something inside her refused to move. She looked at the human again. His hand rested on his knee, open, steady, as if waiting for her to take it. Her heart pounded. Could she? Dare she? For a long moment she only stared. Then slowly, very slowly, she stretched her thin fingers and touched his hand. A shock went through her. Warmth spread through her arm, a strange and frightening feeling, but also safe. The crowd gasped louder. "He touched her," someone shouted. The human did not pull away. Instead, he closed his hand gently over hers, firm but not hurting. He looked at her with calm eyes and said softly, "No more hiding. You are not invisible." Tears filled her eyes again. She bit her lip, trying to stop them, but they rolled down her cheeks anyway. In that moment, the market was no longer filled with shadows and cruelty. For her, it was filled with something new, something she had never known before. Hope. And it was all because of one human who dared to see her differently. The morning sun rose weakly over the alien colony. Dust covered the narrow streets and the whispers of the night still lingered like smoke in the air. Everyone was talking about one thing, the human and the orphan girl. By midday, the whispers turned into open voices. The elders of the colony had heard. They summoned both the human and the orphan to the center square. Soldiers with spears blocked the paths. Traders left their shops to gather. Children climbed on roofs to see. The orphan's legs shook as she stood in front of the crowd. She wanted to run, but the human stood beside her, tall and unshaken. His presence was the only thing stopping her from collapsing in fear. The eldest of the colony, a tall alien with silver skin and sharp eyes, spoke in a cold voice. "Human soldier, you have broken our peace. Why do you feed this orphan? Why do you call her female when no one else does?" The human did not bow his head. His eyes stayed calm. "Because she is female. Because she deserves dignity." A gasp rose from the crowd. The orphan's chest tightened. Each word he spoke made the colony angrier. Why was he risking so much for her? Another elder stepped forward. His voice was harsh. "You insult our traditions. This orphan has no clan, no bond, no value. She is less than dirt. By calling her female, you shame our people." The human's jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. "Your traditions are wrong. She is alive. She feels pain. She deserves respect." The crowd exploded in shouts. Some called him foolish. Some demanded his exile. Others laughed with scorn. The orphan closed her eyes, wishing the ground would swallow her. She whispered, "Please, don't fight them. Please, leave me." But the human heard her whisper and shook his head. His hand brushed against hers, not grabbing, only reminding her that he was still there. One of the soldiers sneered. "Do you mean to take her for yourself, human? Do you mean to claim her as female when no alien male ever has?" The orphan's heart nearly stopped. The words cut through her like knives. She lowered her head, tears burning her eyes. She wanted the human to say no, to deny it, to protect himself. Instead, his voice came clear and strong. "Yes, I see her as female, and I will not leave her." The square fell into stunned silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. The orphan's head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. Did he really say that? In front of them all? The elders' faces twisted with fury. "You dishonor us," one roared. "You bring shame to our colony." The human stood firm. "I bring no shame. I bring truth. You may choose to ignore her, but I will not. She has worth, she matters." The crowd shouted again, louder than before. Some demanded punishment. Others shouted curses at the orphan. Stones were thrown toward her feet. She flinched, pressing closer to the human's side. He did not move back. He stood like a wall between her and the anger of the colony. The eldest elder raised his hand, silencing the crowd. His voice was low but filled with rage. "If you truly mean these words, human, then you stand against us all. Are you ready for the weight of this choice?" The human looked at the orphan, his eyes steady, his voice calm. "I am." The orphan trembled. She could hardly breathe. She wanted to scream at him to stop, to protect himself, but at the same time, something deep inside her began to change. No one had ever stood for her before. No one had ever said she mattered. Now one human stood against the whole colony for her. The crowd began to chant, demanding judgment. The elders stepped back, whispering among themselves. The orphan clutched the human's hand with shaking fingers, her voice a broken whisper. "Why? Why do you not leave me?" His answer was simple yet unshakable. "Because you are not nothing." The words sank into her heart like fire, burning away years of despair. For the first time she felt she could breathe. For the first time she believed maybe, just maybe, she was worth something. But as the chants grew louder, one thing became clear. This was only the beginning. The orphan could not sleep that night. The voices of the crowd still rang in her ears, angry shouts, cruel laughter, and the stones that had struck the ground near her feet. She lay curled up in the corner of the small shelter the human had given her, trembling under a thin blanket. Every sound outside made her jump, but even stronger than fear was the question burning in her chest. Why did he stand for me? Why did he not leave like everyone else? When morning came, she found him outside, sharpening a blade. His clothes were simple, his movements calm, yet his presence filled the air like quiet fire. She stepped closer, her voice weak. Why do you care for me? The human lifted his head. His eyes were steady, the same as when he had faced the entire colony without fear. Because I know what it is to be alone. She blinked, surprised. He did not stop working as he spoke, his voice low but firm. I grew up after a war. My family was gone. My people scattered. I slept hungry many nights. I fought for scraps, for a place to stand. I was invisible to those around me. Her breath caught. His story sounded like hers. For the first time, she realized the human strength was not only in his body but also in his scars. Slowly, she sat near him, her hands twisted in her lap. But you are strong now. People respect you. I am still nothing. The human stopped sharpening the blade. He turned, meeting her eyes. You are not nothing. You only believe what they told you. But you are alive. You are female. And you are worth more than they can see. Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to believe, but fear chained her heart. They will never accept me. They will make you leave. I will not leave. His voice was like stone. The orphan lowered her head, tears blurring her vision. For the first time in her life, someone's promise sounded real. Days passed. The whispers in the colony grew louder. Some aliens watched them with disgust, some with curiosity. The orphan felt their eyes sharp as knives every time she walked beside the human. But she also felt his steady hand guiding her through the crowd. One evening, as they returned from the well, a group of alien males blocked their path. The largest among them, with scales shining under the torchlight, sneered. Human, you insult us all by claiming this orphan. She was never meant to be female. She is filth. The orphan froze, her body trembling. She gripped the human's arm, silently, begging him to walk away, but the male stepped closer. His voice was loud, echoing in the street. If you believe she is female, then prove it. Fight me. By our law, if you lose, you must leave her forever. The crowd gathered quickly, eager for blood. The orphan's heart pounded. She looked at the human with desperate eyes. Please no. Do not risk your life for me. I am not worth it. The human looked down at her. His hand brushed her cheek lightly, wiping away a tear. His voice was gentle but firm. You are worth it. Then he stepped forward. The challenge was set. The alien male drew his blade, teeth bared in a cruel smile. The human tightened his grip on his weapon, his eyes calm. The crowd roared, waiting for the clash. The orphan's body shook with terror. She wanted to scream, to run, to stop the fight. But her legs refused to move. All she could do was watch. The human glanced back once, his eyes locking with hers. In them she saw no fear, only a promise, and in that moment she realized something. No matter what happened, his heart refused to break. But the question burned in her mind. Could his strength truly stand against the entire world that wanted her erased? The answer would come with blood and steel. The night burned with the sound of voices. The colony gathered in the open square, torches flickering against stone walls, the air thick with dust and tension. At the center, two figures stood facing each other, the human and the alien challenger. The orphan stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the whole colony could hear it. Her hands gripped her torn shawl until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream, to stop the madness, but no one would listen. This was the law of the colony. The human had accepted the challenge, and now his life and hers was bound to its outcome. The alien challenger towered over him, his scaled skin shining under firelight, his teeth sharp with cruelty. He raised his blade and sneered, "When I cut you down, human, the orphan will return to the dirt where she belongs." The orphan trembled. Every word stabbed her like a knife. She whispered, "Please don't do this, please." But the human stood tall, calm, and unshaken. He looked back at her once, his eyes steady and warm even in the face of danger. "Trust me," he said softly. The elder raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. "The challenge begins." The alien male roared and rushed forward, his blade slicing through the air. The crowd cheered. Sparks flew as steel met steel. The human blocked the strike, his arm steady though the force pushed him back. The orphan gasped, her knees weakening as she clutched her chest. The fight was brutal. The alien swung with savage strength, each strike loud enough to echo off the walls. The human moved differently, his motions precise, his defense calm. Every block, every counter was not born from anger, but from experience. He had fought battles before. His body carried the memory of survival. Still, the alien was larger, stronger. A blow landed on the human's shoulder, tearing fabric and drawing blood. The orphan cried out, covering her mouth to stop the sound. Her whole body shook as she watched him stagger. The challenger laughed cruelly, raising his blade higher, but the human did not fall. He steadied himself, blood dripping down his arm, and lifted his weapon again. His voice was low but clear. "I will not step back. She deserves someone who will fight for her." The words reached the orphan's ears and filled her with fire. Tears blurred her sight. But for the first time she felt something stronger than fear. She felt pride. The alien attacked again, faster, trying to crush him with sheer strength. But this time, the human's blade slid past the strike, cutting across the alien's arm. The challenger roared in pain. The crowd gasped. The human pressed forward. Each movement was sharp, focused, and unyielding. He struck again, forcing the alien back step by step. Sparks lit the night as their blades clashed, firelight reflecting in the human's eyes. At last, with a final twist, the human disarmed the challenger. The alien's blade flew into the dirt. The human's weapon rested against his throat. The crowd fell silent, every voice stolen by shock. The elder's voice broke the silence. "The human has won." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then the crowd erupted, some in disbelief, some in fury, some in awe. The orphan ran forward, falling to her knees beside the human. His arm bled heavily, his breath ragged, yet his eyes still carried that same calm fire. She grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave me, please." He looked at her, weak but smiling faintly. "I won't. Not now. Not ever." She pressed her forehead to his chest, her tears soaking into his torn shirt. Around them, the crowd still shouted, torn between anger and silence, but in that moment she did not hear them. All she knew was that one human had stood against the whole colony, had fought with his life, and had won, for her. But even as relief washed over her, a shadow lingered in her heart. This victory would not end their struggle. If anything, it was only the beginning. The square was empty now. The crowd had scattered, leaving behind only dust, broken torches, and the memory of the fight. The human sat against a wall, his wounded arm wrapped in cloth. The orphan stayed beside him, holding the bandage tightly. With her small hands afraid to let go, her heart was still racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the blade slicing toward him, the blood on his shoulder, the cruel laughter of the crowd. But stronger than fear was something new, something that made her chest feel warm. He had fought for her. He had chosen her, even when the whole colony stood against them. "You should rest," she whispered softly. The human gave a small smile. "And leave you here alone?" "No. I will stay awake." She shook her head. "I don't understand you. Why risk your life? Why fight when you could walk away?" His eyes, calm even in pain, met hers. "Because you matter. Even if no one else sees it, I do. And I will not let you believe the lie they forced on you." Her throat tightened. Tears threatened to fall again, but she bit them back. For years she had lived as if she were invisible, worthless, less than dirt. Now this human's words burned away those chains. The next day, the whispers in the colony changed. Some aliens still cursed her name, calling her a curse, a shame. But others had seen what the human did, and they could not deny his strength. A human had defeated one of their strongest males. And for what? For an orphan girl everyone had called nothing. Children pointed at her in the streets whispering, but their eyes were no longer filled only with disgust. Some looked with curiosity, some even with wonder. For the orphan it was terrifying. Attention had always meant pain, but when she walked with the human beside her, she felt safer. His presence was a shield, his hand steady whenever her courage faltered. One evening, they sat near the edge of the colony, watching the red sun sink behind the jagged mountains. The sky burned with color, and for the first time, the orphan thought it looked beautiful. She hugged her knees and whispered, "Do you think I can really be female like others?" The human turned to her. His voice was gentle but strong. "You already are. It is not something they decide. It is who you are." Her eyes widened. She had never thought of it that way. For so long, she believed her worth depended on others seeing her. Now, for the first time, she wondered if maybe she'd been female all along, hidden under the weight of their rejection. She whispered, almost afraid of her own voice. "Then maybe I can belong somewhere." The human's lips curved in the faintest smile. "You belong with me." Her heart stopped. The words echoed inside her chest, filling the empty spaces that had lived there for years. She looked away quickly, afraid he would see the tears in her eyes, but he already knew. The days grew quieter after that. She helped him with small tasks, carrying water, preparing food, tending to his wounds. Each small act made her feel less like an orphan, less like nothing, and more like someone who mattered. But peace never lasted long in the colony. The elders were not finished. One night, as the human and the orphan shared a small meal in silence, a messenger arrived. His face was pale, his voice urgent. "The council has decided. You must both stand before them at dawn." The orphan's heart dropped. Fear rushed back like a storm. She clutched the human's sleeve, whispering, "They will take you away. They will take me away." The human placed his hand over hers, steady and warm. "Then we will face them together." Her chest tightened. For the first time in her life, she realized she was no longer alone. Whatever came next, whatever trial awaited, they would face it side by side. And in that truth, something inside her finally began to heal. The dawn was heavy with silence. Clouds hid the sun, and the air itself seemed to wait. At the center of the colony, the council stood in a half circle, their silver robes glowing in the pale light. Soldiers lined the edges, and the crowd gathered in restless waves. The orphan clung to the human's sleeve, her small body trembling. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "They will destroy us. They will not forgive." The human's hand rested on hers, steady and warm. "Then let them speak. We will answer together." The eldest elder raised his staff, his voice sharp like iron. "Human soldier, you have broken our ways. You have claimed an orphan as female. You have fought our warriors, stood against our laws. Today we decide if you will remain, or if you both will be cast out forever." The crowd murmured. Some shouted for exile, others for blood. The orphan lowered her head, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. She wanted to hide, to vanish. But the human stood firm, tall against their judgment. The eldest elder's eyes narrowed. "Why do you defend her? She is nothing. She has no clan, no value. Why risk your honor, your life, for this orphan?" The human's answer was calm, yet his voice carried across the square like thunder. "Because she is not nothing, she is alive. She feels, she hopes, and she deserves the chance to live with dignity." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The orphan's breath caught. His words pierced through her fear, lighting a fire deep in her chest. But the elders were not moved. Another elder stepped forward, sneering. "You say she is female, prove it. Show us why she should be seen as anything more than dirt." The orphan's knees shook. She felt hundreds of eyes pressing on her, crushing her spirit. She wanted to scream that she was not strong enough, but then the human knelt beside her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You don't need to prove to them," he whispered. "You only need to stand. Look at them. Let them see you are not afraid." Her chest tightened. For years she had hidden in shadows, wishing to disappear. Now he asked her to step into the light. Her hands shook, her legs weak. But slowly she lifted her head. Her eyes met the crowd. Some stared with hate, but others looked uncertain, their expressions softening. Her lips trembled, yet her voice, though quiet, reached the silence. "I am not nothing," she whispered. "I have a name. I have a heart. I am female. Even if none of you believe, I know it now." The square fell silent. The words, fragile, but true, echoed like a spark in dry wood. Some in the crowd looked away in shame. Some whispered to one another. The human rose beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. The eldest elder's eyes narrowed, anger flashing. "This is madness. A human cannot change our ways." But before he could speak further, another voice rose from the crowd. An old alien woman, bent with age, stepped forward. "Enough," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "I was once called nothing too. I know the pain she carries. The human is right. Worth is not given by tradition. Worth is born in the heart." Murmurs spread like fire. More voices joined, hesitant at first, then louder. Some shouted for change, others for the council's rule. The square was divided, chaos rising. The human's voice cut through it all. "Then let her live. If you will not accept her, we will leave. We do not need your chains." The orphan gasped, looking up at him. His words were not just protection, they were a promise. He was ready to walk away from everything for her. The council whispered among themselves, their faces twisted with anger and doubt. At last, the eldest elder slammed his staff. "Very well. Leave. From this day you are no longer of this colony. You are nothing to us." The crowd erupted, some cheering, some crying out in rage. Soldiers lowered their spears. The human took the orphan's hand and led her away, step by step, through the noise, through the shadows, into the open world beyond the walls. Her heart pounded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not from fear, but from something greater. She was free. She was no longer nothing. At the edge of the colony, she stopped and looked back one last time. The place that had broken her could no longer hold her. Then she turned to the human. His calm eyes met hers, and he said softly, "Now, we begin again." Her lips trembled, but she smiled through her tears. For the first time in her life, she believed those words. This was not the end. It was the beginning of a new life. One where she was seen. One where she was no longer alone.